Hey everyone, welcome back. Bruce here with DIY Homestead Projects. In this video, I'm going to show you how I built this simple, cheap tent wood burning stove or DIY hot tent stove. And my inspiration for this stove design came from another YouTube channel, a guy by the name of Lonnie, who did a video, and that's where I got all my ideas on how to do this. His channel's name is Far North Bushcraft and Survival, and he's got tons of experience and some great videos. So I'll put a link to his channel down below, or the video that inspired me to build this stove. I did make a couple of changes here and there from what he actually did, but he just does a real good tutorial on all the details of how to build this stove. I thought it'd be a real fun project, so I'm going to share it with you guys today. This video that you're watching right now is just going to be the build video. I'll make a separate video and link it in the description to the burn video when I light this stove up for the very first time, test it out, burn off the galvanized coating, and just kind of test it out and see how it does. Anyway, let's get on to it, and we'll go into the build and I'll show you how I put mine together. He used a 7-inch diameter pipe. Now my Lowe's didn't have any 7-inch diameter in stock, so I picked up a 6-inch. My choices were 6 or 8. This is a 5-foot piece of 6-inch diameter pipe. First step I'm going to do is try to get this flattened out somewhat, and then I'm going to cut two 24-inch pieces out of it. So I've just got about an 8-foot workbench here, and I'm going to try to flatten this out a little bit. I think on Lonnie's video, his was 22 inches. Let's measure this one and see what I end up with. 19 3/16. So I'll have to do the math on that and figure out exactly how that's going to work out. So I've got a 24-inch piece drawn out there, and I'll cut it, and then I'll measure out the other one and cut it as well, so I have the two pieces. Okay, I've got my first half cut out. I just used these shears. That seemed to work really well. This piece fits underneath the other side. So this bump right here, this edge, is where I started my measurement. And then the other side has a bump on it as well. And this is where I stopped the measurement. So the measurement I got from that was 19 inches. I then drew a center mark. Each side is going to be 9.5 inches. I think Lonnie's came out to be 11 inches. If you build this out of 6-inch diameter pipe, instead of 7-inch, you're going to have a 1.5-inch smaller, both in width and height, stove versus the stove that he built on his video, Make a Simple, Cheap Tent Stove. So I just divided 9.5 in half, and that gives me 4 3/4. So using the same points that I measured from before, I measured 4 3/4 and put a mark, and then the same on this other side from that edge that I showed you, 4 3/4 and put a mark. So that now divides, that'll be half of the side, this will be half of the side, and this will be either the top or the bottom across here, this 9.5 inches. So I'm going to do the same measurements on the other side of the sheet and then draw a straight line right across that mark and there. So I'll have this divided into 3 pieces. This is the jig I've got set up for bending the edges. You just got to use whatever it is you got laying around, and I'm pretty short on clamps and that sort of thing, but this is what I've come up with. And then I just took a wooden handled screwdriver and used that to kind of crease that bend so I get a nice sharp 90-degree bend. And the first one I did came out pretty nice. So let me readjust this a little bit, and I'll see if I can't get this one bent for you. You can watch how I do it. Just as Lonnie showed in his video, he used a tape roll that he had that measured a 4-inch hole, because I'm going to use the same 4-inch pipe that he used for the chimney. And I'll be darned if I didn't have a roll of duct tape. It's been wore down to just a hair over 4 inches, so I think that'll be close enough. And the only thing I got laying around is this heavy, dense piece of particle board. So I'm going to lay that on there and draw a circle, and then drill a hole and take my jigsaw and cut the hole out so that I've got a jig for peening the chimney hole in the top piece of the stove. Double check it. That's 1 3/4 inches. 1 inch from the side. That's what I've come up with. It's a lot of work to do that, but personally, I think that the benefit of the extra strength for where that chimney sits is going to be worth it. At least it's worth it to me. So we got that part done. Now I need to get this set up on the jig on the side of the table and get these edges bent. All right, after I got the back installed, and I just put it on with steel rivets. They're 1/8 inch steel by 1/4 inch grip. I just picked these up at Lowe's. They're about $5.50 for a box of 100, so I'll have plenty to do the whole project with. And then here's what it looks like inside with the baffle installed. To make the baffle, I just used the end piece of the 6" by 5" pipe that I bought, and it was kind of all crumpled up, and I flattened it out the best I could. It's just a baffle, so it doesn't matter to me if it looks a little bit crinkly and whatnot. But anyway, it's 16 inches from the back of the stove. That'll give me 6 inches from the front of the baffle to the door. It's about 1 3/4 inches off the top, and it does slant back a little bit because the pipe sticks down in there, and that gives me about a 1/2 inch distance between the bottom of the stove pipe and the top of the baffle. That's all a guess. I have no idea how that's going to work. I'm just hoping that it'll work out good. If not, I'll have to get in here and make some changes, but we'll try it with that and see how it does. Now, the whole point of that baffle is all of the gases that are built by the fire have to come up and work their way around the front of this. Now, I did put my baffle as tight up against the back wall as I could. The gases have to come up forward, up, and around to go back up, and that just keeps the hot gases and smoke in the stove as long as possible, so they have that detour to go around that baffle before they can come to the back and go out the top. That should get the hot gases up close to the top surface where we plan to do cooking. I'm hoping that it works that way, and also maybe help prevent getting sparks going out the top of the chimney. It's supposed to be more efficient that way, so all the heat doesn't just go directly out that hole. It has to circulate around inside here and heat and dissipate the heat before it goes out the top. That's the theory anyway. We'll see how it works out. This is the first stove I've ever built. Now I'm going to work on making the front. And the process is the same as when I made the back cap. So this is what I started out with for the back cap and the front cap. I bought a piece of just flat sheet, and I got it at the same place right next to where I got the pipe at Lowe's. It was like $7.50 for a sheet that was 16 inches wide by 35 inches in length. And I cut 2 squares out. Now my squares totaled 11.5. So I've got 2 inches for each of these flaps, and you can see I've cut these corners out, but this inner box to the corner here is 9.5, 10.5, and 11.5. So I could fold those flaps in to where I can put it inside into the stove. And then I've drawn out some lines on here to where I'm going to cut this door. I'm going to bend all the flaps first, and then I'm going to cut the door last, I think, so it doesn't warp this plate out of shape when I try to fit it in the front of the stove. But I'm going to have about a 7" by 7.5" doorway by the time it's all said and done. I've drawn out the size of the door and then gone in 1 inch on all 4 edges so I can have a 1 inch flap to fold over, and I'll show you how I do that when I get to that point. I'm going to use the same techniques to bend this one as I did on the last one. So here's where I'm at this point on the make a simple, cheap tent wood burning stove, or DIY hot tent stove, or home built hot tent stove, whatever you want to name it. I've kind of gone a little bit fancy on the legs here. I'm an amateur TIG welder, and I had some scrap aluminum. This is 1/8 inch thick aluminum laying around, so I fabricated these legs, and then I just bolted it on to the side with some big washers on the inside. 1/4 inch bolts, big washers on the inside, some washers on the outside. And that way I've got a folding leg system that'll allow me to fold up the legs for storage and transport, so it's a little bit more compact. See how they fold flat up against the bottom. They're nice, and if this stove burns out and I need to build another box, I could just unbolt these and use these legs on the next stove. That's the theory, and that's my idea behind that. But they did come out pretty nice, even though I'm not that good of a TIG welder on aluminum. But I put these little blocks here, and that's what rides up against the bottom of the stove and keeps the legs from falling all the way out. I have it at a slight angle. And it's pretty sturdy, nice and level. I came up with this door latch system. I've got 2 bolts through the side here, and then hopefully you can kind of see how that works. As I raise and lower this, it has an angled section here and an angled section here, so that goes down behind the bolt, and the harder you push down on this, the tighter it pulls the door closed. I've just got that on there with a couple of bolts and double nuts, as well as I didn't have a spring or anything for the vent hole, so I just cut a piece to cover that hole and used just a single bolt and kind of tightened it down. It's still movable. Now as that heats up, it may not hold tight. I may have to get a spring and use that method. But I had 2 pieces I had to rivet together, and then I used about I think it's about a 9-inch piece of piano hinge. I just so happened to have that laying around from a previous project, and it's riveted on with the steel rivets. So that's the door system. I cut a couple of slots in this piece and put those bolts through with washers so that I can slide that up and down. Now I think I'm going to have to come up with a little better handle for this, because I think that's going to get too hot to touch when the stove is operating. Maybe I'll put a steel ring on there or something that I can just grab the ring and lift it. But we'll see how it works out. The stove is almost finished, but I'm going to do the first burn without a floor in here so I can burn off as much galvanized coating as I can on the bottom. But then I'm going to put in a raised floor. I want to build a baffle to go in the flue pipe, and eventually, if the stove proves to be operable and it works okay, I'm going to build a shelf for it like Lonnie did in his video. But I'm going to wait on those items until I burn it, just to see how it does. Big thanks and props to Lonnie for making his video and giving me the inspiration to build this one. If you guys enjoyed the video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. That'll really help me out. If you're not already subscribed, consider subscribing to the channel. You never know what kind of strange do-it-yourself building project I'm going to get into next. And we'll see you guys over there on the burn video.